Hello everyone, my name is Jeremy Wolverton, and in this video I would like to show you how to use the sample budget sheet that is available for download on my blog. This sheet is set up into three main parts. On the left you will have the balances of your accounts as well as your sources of income. In the middle is where you'll have all of your expenses, and on the far right is where you'll have your net income summary. Now, all three sections are pretty self-explanatory, but I will demonstrate how you can build your budget into these three sections. First, you will want to start off by filling in the information that is marked in yellow. Since the spreadsheet has to start from somewhere, you'll need to supply this information. Enter the current date or the date that you want to start budgeting. Obviously, the sooner you start budgeting, the better, but sometimes it's easier to start with a fresh month. I'm going to start with 9/1/14, so September of 2014. Notice how that it automatically filled in the months after that, and it's just showing the month and the year instead of the entire date. And now let's say that your savings account is going to start with $4,000. Notice how that filled in as well, and that your checking account is going to start with $2,000. And notice that the savings and checking are the same all the way down. Well, that's because we haven't entered any income or any expenses yet. But let's see what happens when we enter in some income sources. We'll say Jeremy, and we'll say other. Let's start off with $2,000 and $1,000. Notice that on the far right side in the net income summary, we show our income as a total of $3,000 and our net income as a total of $3,000. Well, that's because we have the income, but we don't have any expenses yet. So now let's put in some typical expenses. Let's say that we have a mortgage, a car payment, gas for the car, of course, groceries, utilities, and entertainment. I'll just shorten that. And then of course we can put in some fictional values for these. We'll say an $800 mortgage payment, maybe a $300 car payment, $150 in gas, $200 in groceries, $150 in utilities, $50 for entertainment. These are just fictional values, of course. I don't expect them to be the same for anybody. Notice on the far right in our net income summary, we now show $3,000 coming in, $1,650 going out, with a net of $1,350. So what are we going to do with that leftover $1,350? Well, we're going to want to save it, because that's what this is all about. So let's move $1,000 of that into our savings account. Now what that does is over on the next row, it has taken our savings balance and made it $5,000 based on the $4,000 plus the $1,000 to savings. And then the leftover $350 remains in our checking account. So now one of the reasons why I love Excel so much, or other spreadsheet software, is that you can use the fill function. If you hold your mouse over the bottom right hand corner of a cell that you have selected, it could be multiple cells or just one, I'll show it with just one, the little plus sign will come up. If you click and hold and drag that down, it will repeat the same values. Now you can see the 2,000 has filled its way down, and we'll do the same with the 1,000. And then we'll do the same with our expenses. And I'll demonstrate how you can do that with multiple rows. Bottom right hand corner, fill down. So now notice how our savings account and our checking account are probably doing the opposite of what we want it to do. We want our savings to go up and our checking to stay around the same. That's because we haven't been putting any money into our savings over here. So with $1,350 every month, looks like we can keep that pretty reasonable, around $1,000, probably even a little more, because after a few months your checking account is going to have more money than you probably need in there. So let's put $1,500 in on here. Back to 1,000, 1,500. I could have just filled that down, but I chose not to for some reason. So obviously this looks really good on paper. Our savings account has 20,000 and we even have 6,000 in our checking. Yeah, we're saving money every month, but that's not really how life works. We have expenses that show up at different times and different amounts. Different parts of the year is harder than others, and sometimes it's just seemingly random from month to month. You'll have things like property tax, car insurance, house insurance, car repair, and just other random things that will come up, like your water heater breaks. So to help offset some of that, I like to do a random function. So we'll just call this expense random. If you do an equal sign, rand, between, and then a parentheses, let's just say your low value is going to be $200 and your high value is going to be $250. So what this will do is every month it will take a random value between 200 and 250 and just put it in the expense column. As we see, 241, 225, it's just going to pick randomly there. So that helps make this look a little bit more like real life and less like static numbers. Other things that come up are going to be property tax. I'll just say taxes. In December, $300 for the winter tax. In July, let's say $2,500 for the summer. But uh-oh, look what that did to our checking account over here. This has gone in the negative. And that's because we went ahead and put $1,000 in our savings over here. So because of that, let's make some adjustments. We're not going to be putting that $1,000 in there for this 2 months because we don't want to go negative when it comes to July. You can also use this to plan for things like vacations. Let's say in March of 2015 we want to spend $2,500 on a vacation. That was 25,000. That's a pretty expensive vacation. Let's just do 2,500 like I said. So it's probably also realistic that we're not going to be putting money away that previous month, so we can stay in the positive for our checking account. So as you can see, that looks a little bit more realistic, and the good news is we're actually saving some money still too. There's actually some months in here where I think the checking account is a little bit lower than I want it to be. So I'm going to reduce the amount that I'm putting into savings here. Just keep it above $1,000. Now you can obviously adjust accordingly to whatever you feel comfortable with, but that's just the guideline I'm going by here. Another thing that's very helpful is every month that goes by, come back through and actually update the beginning balances of your accounts. So let's say at the beginning of October, instead of the predicted $5,000, we actually had $5,007. Or the checking was actually $2,200. This will help your forecasting to be a lot more accurate, because if you just go by this, as the months go by, it would start to get thrown off quite a bit. And you can also do the same with your income. If you're paid bi-weekly, then there's usually 2 times a year, or 2 months a year rather, where you're paid 3 times in 1 month. And let's say that happened in December. You actually got 3 pays. So instead of your normal $2,000, it's actually $3,000 for the month of December. You can also plan for things like your tax returns. Let's say in March you know you're going to get a tax return for $1,500. Or in June, let's say you won at the casino and you took home $5,000, which is very timely for that $2,500 vacation and taxes coming up. And if you're comfortable with Excel, feel free to put in your own formulas. You can track your mortgage payments over here on the far right. You can do car payments or your loan amortization. You could calculate your net worth on a regular basis. It's very versatile, it's very powerful, and I highly recommend using it. So that concludes my sample budget worksheet tutorial. As you can see, in about a year and a half, we managed to save $16,000, actually quite a bit more than that since we have $9,000 in our checking. Probably not realistic, but just an example to show you how it works. So thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment on my blog.